Ramadan is around the corner, inshallah. And while we fast from food and water, there's been a lot of physicians that have said that fasting for water for long periods of time is very unhealthy, especially on your liver. And I have a lot of friends who have said the same thing, and sometimes I don't know how to address that. So how would you address that in terms of modern day and prophetic medicine?
Well, because fasting is prescribed as an obligation for people who are healthy, there are some groups for whom fasting is inappropriate, and the fuqahas and the scholars have listed the details of those. And if people fall into any of those categories, or they think they might be in those categories, then obviously they need to consult those appropriate people who have the right knowledge and the expertise, and they can individualize the advice for them. But for most normal and healthy people, fasting is actually a process of healing and treatment for many, many modern diseases. And in America especially, you have a lot of literature and expertise. There is a whole society, International Society of Hygienists, founded in US, which trains physicians and natural therapists in specializing in fasting as a way of treating and facilitating people towards health. There were sanatoriums run on this basis. So for example, there is a book that comes to mind, Fasting Can Save Your Life, a very popular book. I'm not sure how many of you have read it. So fasting in itself is a great healer for especially chronic diseases and lifestyle diseases. As to the issue of water, obviously people who fast have to understand that whilst it is a sacred obligation on us, we have to adjust our life and eating during the fasting. If people continue to work like crazy during Ramadan or study too much during Ramadan and eat in a way that's detrimental, then whilst they're fasting, the impact will be even worse on them. It's like having a white, clean dress that you cleaned it, and then any spot on it will show up very quickly. So because fasting is a therapeutic process in terms of body, people need to adjust their rest, their eating, so that that benefit is not lost. If they don't do that, then really fasting becomes a problem for them. Not because fast is a problem, but they have no other for the fasting. Everything has an appropriate other etiquettes. And because fasting is such a individual and elevated form of worship, so Allah says that I reward, people, but for the fasting, the reward is a very special kind of reward. So again, I go back and say really that there needs to be consideration, what is the etiquettes of fasting, not only in terms of fiqh, but in terms of health, and how can we adjust our food and drinks so it meets those. In some sections of our community, when fasting comes actually the consumption of junk food increases. And then people pride themselves. In England there is a town, I shan't mention it, but usually 3 months before the arrival of fasting, mostly women start working extra hard, preparing cheap food and filling the freezers with that so that they can fry a lot more of the stuff during Ramadan. So the frying increases, which in itself is a problem. And then drinks which are really laced with chemicals and so on and so forth. The eating of denatured chicken increases during the fasting. So as people, we really have to bring back the etiquettes and the adab and the respect for these institutions. And then instead of becoming harmful, they actually become a source of both spiritual cleansing and a physiological cleansing.